Hello. So I'm going to do something a little different. I really don't know how long this is going to take, but it just hit me a couple of days ago. Today is December 15th, 2023, and I was thinking about the way things had happened recently, and a couple of things occurred to me. And that is how involved God has been in my finances. And I knew there was some things along the way that were odd, but I didn't realize until recently what a master plan this all has been. It's just absolutely amazing to me. Now, before I get started on this journey, I'll tell you what the first major thing that occurred to me was we own 5 little houses, okay? Little rental houses. And I was thinking about our ministry, and I was thinking about the people that we have been able to help by teaching them or helping them with money. Guess how many there were? 5. There was Shannon, Lisa, the preacher, Preston, Bonnie, and Matthew. And we'd helped them all in different ways, but we had helped them. And it occurred to me, wow, what a coincidence that is. The ministry has helped 5 people with their finances, and we have 5 houses. I didn't think much more about it. So then I started thinking, well, what if this hadn't happened, I wouldn't have gotten here, and if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't be here, and what are the odds of all of these things happening to get me to where I'm at now? And the answer to that is nil. So I'm going to run over, I made an outline because I wanted to make sure that I got as many of the details in as I could possibly remember. And the purpose of this is for whoever watches this, that God get the glory for what He has done in my life financially. And remember, when we start this journey, I'm making $7.50 an hour. Now I'm now making $15 an hour, but that's been 20 years later. Okay? So you can do the math as we go through this. I specifically remember the day when I was sitting in this apartment making $7.50 an hour, and I was thinking, how am I going to make this? I sat down, and I'm pretty good at budgeting. And I remember leaning back in my chair and just throwing my pen on the table and saying, God, this has got to be you. There is no budget in this budget. I got nothing. I got no ideas. I got no plans. I got nothing. I'm turning it all over to you. Because I can't. And I got up from there frustrated. And I went and sat down and turned on the TV. So the next day I go to work, and my boss calls me into the office and says, hey, we're going to give you $1 an hour raise. Now, $1 an hour a raise doesn't sound like much, but when you're making $7.50 an hour, $1 means a lot. And that covered whatever it is I was short, and I was so happy about that. I can't explain to you how happy and unbelievably shocked. That had to be God. Because we don't get regular raises around here. In fact, in the last 10 years, I've gotten 2 raises. Okay? So for that to happen the very next day after I turned my finances over to God was just amazing to me. So I struggled along for a while. And one of the things that I did to keep myself going, because it was tough financially, but I decided all work and no play makes Brian a dull boy. So I decided that every Friday for lunch, I would take myself and go to Taco Gringo for lunch, because I figured if I made it for a whole week at this crappy paying job and I survived another week, I was going to have lunch. And I did. And somewhere along the way, I heard about the Discover card paying 1% back on cash back. And I thought, well, that's, 1% is better than nothing. So I went ahead and I applied. I got the card. And so I, just every once in a while I'd use the thing. And I went to the grocery store one time. This will tell you how naive I was. I went to the grocery store and there was a person in front of me and they paid with the credit card. And in my mind I was thinking, who the hell pays for groceries with a credit card? By the time you get that paid off, your groceries will have doubled in cost. So I just let it go. And so finally, one day, I decided, if I'm going to get 1% back and I'm going to be spending the money anyway, I should try to put as much as I normally spend on this card. Because now I had figured out I'm going to pay this thing off at the end of each month, which I've never done that before this point. So I did. And in the meantime, I was listening to Dave Ramsey, and he recommended a mutual fund. So I got that mutual fund. It was called the Bruce Fund. But the minimum that you could deposit into the Bruce Fund was $500. So I just kept using my little credit card, and when I got to $500, I cashed it in and put it in the mutual fund. I really don't know how long it took, but I saved about $2,000 in this mutual fund. Now, mind you, I wasn't saving any money because there was no money to save. I had a checking account that was on the edge of overdraft every day, and I was worried about it, and I was doing everything I could. So fast forward a couple of years, I'm driving my Ford Exploder, and the engine broke or something happened. I was driving my van, and the engine stopped, and Eric said he could fix it, so I drove it over and gave it to him. I just gave him the van. Who cares? He didn't have a vehicle, and I was going to have to go get another one anyway. So I gave him the van, went and got my Ford Exploder, and that's when I got my Land O'Lincoln credit card. And I got that one because it was only like 5% interest on this credit card. No cash back, and it turned out that was going to be a critical credit card for me. Because, as I said, I still wasn't making any money, and the only vehicles I could afford were junkers. So I got the Ford Exploder, and that one crapped out on me. And I just sold it for scrap. And I was getting ready to go shop for another vehicle, and Blake called me and said, "Hey, I understand you're looking for a vehicle. Don't make any decisions yet because I might have something for you." Well, he ended up giving me a little car for free. And it was a nice little car. I enjoyed the car. And at the time, I had a paper route, and I was out on my route, and a drunk driver hit me from behind and totaled that little car. Now, I drove that car for a couple of years. And in the meantime, I'm still using my credit card. I'm still doing cash back. I got that credit card probably in 05 or 06. We're 10 years later now. This is 2016 when my car gets totaled. And I've got a couple thousand in a mutual fund, but that's I can't touch that. So I decided I was going to go lease a car. Now, I've had no car, I've had car payments, but, they were $150 a month because I was driving junkers. And the car that Blake gave me had no payment. It was a free car. So I was surviving. I was starting to save a little bit of cash, not much. But the Toyota Corolla that I got in 2016, the payment was $262 a month. I had no idea where I was going to get that money. And to this day, I just paid this car out this month. Because after the lease, then I purchased it and we paid it off early. To this day, I do not know how I afforded that car. I don't know where the money came from. Because on paper, there's no way I should have been able to pay for that car. But somehow, every month for the last 7 years, money has showed up month in and month out to pay for that car. It's now paid off. So that was 2016 when I bought the car. Now, let's see, 99, 09, 19, minus 3. So about 20, it was 2020. 2020. I stopped paying child support to Cindy. And just for the record, I should have stopped paying when Brandy Lee graduated high school. But I decided to pay her child support for 4 more years so Brandy Lee would have a place to live. Because I know Cindy. If there's no money in it, Brandy would have been kicked out. So I paid for 4 more years, and that took it up to 2020. Now in 2020, I stopped paying child support, but I still gave Brandy Lee a credit card to use while she was in school, because I wanted to help her. At this point, she's moved out and moved on up. Now the child support that I was paying, and I don't remember the exact amount, but it was around $400 or $500 a month, is all I was paying. But to me, that was a windfall. So that money went directly into savings. That $400 or $500 every month, straight into savings. So, and when I looked back the other day and I realized 2020 was the year God got busy on my finances. We'd been prepping up to this point, but things hadn't kicked into gear. But now we got some cash. I now have $4,000 in the bank. And I felt the urge, now, and I want to explain that when I was in real estate before, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Because first off, I didn't know what I was doing. I over-leveraged. Every month was a struggle. Every day was a different problem. And I absolutely hated it. When I took this job, I didn't want this job. And that was one of the things, one of the miracles I remember. I was sitting in the apartment above the old Mustard Seed bookstore, and God and I had a verbal conversation in that apartment. And I saw the ad in the paper, and I said, I'm not going to do that. God said, apply for that job. I said, I don't want to. I hate real estate. And God said, but I will teach you. And I was like, okay, fine. So I put on my shittiest looking clothes. I didn't take a bath. I didn't comb my hair. I thought, okay, God, you want me to go apply? Fine, I'll go apply. So I went in and applied and got the damn job. So anyway, and I've been here for 20 years. And so anyway, Another thing that occurred to me the other day when I was thinking about this, all the good things that have happened in my finances started the month that I got free of paying child support to Cindy. Now, why that is, I don't know. But it's no coincidence. The whole time I was tied up with Cindy, my finances have been in the toilet from the day I met her to the last child support payment I made. My finances sucked all the balls. They did. But the month I stopped, God just got busy. I got my settlement from my wreck in 2016. I got the settlement in 2020, right after that. And I was trying to think how much I got. I think I got $15,000. And that $15,000, again, I prayed about it because I wanted to just put it in the bank. Then I thought about paying off the car because Blake had suggested that. And I just prayed about it, and God said, no, pay your credit card off. Because I've been running the balance for 10 years on that card because I was putting all of my car repairs on that card. And I was just making monthly payments, just struggling. So God said, go take, and I probably had $5,000 on that card. So now I had $10,000 in cash and no debt. So I had the $10,000 plus I had $4,000 that I had saved, and God said, go buy a house. I don't want to. I don't like being a landlord. I don't like the problems. I don't like the headaches. I'd always said when I was younger that if people had just paid me what they owed me, I'd be a millionaire. But people lie, cheat, and steal, and they never paid the rent. But again, I went out and looked at the little house on South 13th, and I looked at the sign in the yard, and Brian Moore's name was on the bottom. Actually, I didn't go out to look at that one. I went out to look at one that was across the street, and I think I saw it in the paper. I don't remember how, but anyway, as I was pulling out of the parking or the driveway, I saw the house across the street was for sale, and then I saw Brian Moore's name on it. So I called him and I said, are you the Brian Moore that sold for Penn Life? And he said, yeah. I said, well, I'm sitting here at your house on 13th, and I'd like to take a look at it. So an hour or two later, he shows up and we go through, and I haven't bought a house in 20 years at this point. And so I just said, what do you think? And he said, I think this is a good deal. I think you should do this. So we made an offer, and we settled at $52,000, and he took it. Just before closing, the appraisal comes in at $50,000. So the guy took, and he said, okay. So we did it at $50,000. So already I've saved $2,000. Then I went in for financing, and the banker says, hey, instead of doing an FHA, if you could put $500 more down, I can get you a grant for your down payment. So I got a grant for $6,000 on a $50,000 house, plus the $2,000 I put down. This has to be God. This doesn't happen. So we closed on the house, and I started doing like I did before. I went out and I got a tenant, and I found a good one. And she left because the guy next door was a creep. Well, then I found another one. And now remember, this is 2020, the end of 2020. And he gets COVID. Of course he does. And he was a scumbag. And I didn't know it, but a couple of months later, he died. His wife lived in the house for 13 months without paying rent. 13 months. Fortunately, the scumbag told me that there was a loan program where I don't have to make my payments because the government, the state government, wouldn't let me evict them. So I went in and did that, and I didn't lose a dime. Now the bank upped my loan amount after 13 months, but that, I mean, I didn't lose a penny. And I look back on it and I think, I bought that house with ministry money. And I was so worried about getting God's $2,000 back for his ministry, and I went 13 months with no income, and I was worried sick. But the other day I looked back on it and I thought, wow, that was a ministry house, bought with ministry money, and God used it. He used it so that that scumbag's wife would have a place to live and get herself together. And that's what happened. So when she moved out, she stole my washer and dryer. I didn't pay any rent. And I decided, and I prayed about it, and I decided I was not going to pursue her. Because it was then that I found out that the scumbag died and she was on her own. And she was doing some crappy little job like McDonald's. And I thought, what's the purpose in pursuing her? And I remembered that when Teresa died, I wished somebody had given me a break. So I just let it go. God got to bless her with a place to live. I got blessed by God with the house. And in the process, after that first closing, after we closed on that house, I was leaving closing, and again I heard a voice, and it said, okay, now go buy another one. And I was like, Lord, I just got out of a closing. I know, go buy another house. So I contacted Brian Moore, and we bought another one up on Converse. Now, at this point, I was telling Brian about my worries, and he said, well, if you aren't good at that, I can do that. That's what I do for a living. I'll find your tenants for you. Okay. He's done a great job. This is 4 years later, and he's done a great job. But anyway, so we go to closing on the second house. We're walking out of closing. Now, I want you to know, I had nothing planned. I was just going to get in my car and go. And for some reason, I walked up to Brian Moore and I said, hey, I got something to tell you. And he said, yeah, what's that? I said, in 1 year from today, there's going to be a great deal on a duplex come up. And you won't believe the deal. It's going to be a great deal, but it's not going to be for you, it's for me. So when it happens, contact me. And he said, okay. I got in the car and I thought, wow, where the hell did that come from? So I forgot about it, to tell you the truth. You know, we had 2 little houses. We finally got some tenants in there that were paying some rent. I was doing okay. I started my other job. I had gotten out of doing the papers. I got out of that after my wreck, working at the liquor store. So everything was fine. And one day, the phone rings, and it's Brian Moore. And he says, hey, I just got an unbelievable deal on a duplex right behind you. Let's go look at it right now because it's going to get snapped up. So I went over, and this duplex was great. I mean, each one was 2 bedrooms. The interior was great. There wasn't a thing that needed to be done, and there was a tenant moving in as we were looking at it. And it had a 2-car attached garage. It was on the far west side. It was great. $89,000 for this thing. They go for $200,000. So I made an offer. And they accepted it. And I was going to give my business to a friend of mine at another bank. And when I called, he said, let me let you talk to my loan officer. And he said, how much cash do you have? And at this point, I thought I was wealthy. I said, I've got $12,000 in cash. And he said, you have no business buying a duplex. that's not enough. And I was like, well, if I get a FHA loan, I only need 3.5% down. He said, yeah, but you don't have enough. So I hung up the phone, and that moment changed my life. Because up to this point, in addition to worrying about money, surviving, actually, I never really, after I got saved, I never really cared about money. Still don't. But at that point, I prayed and I said, Lord, you know how I feel about money. But that's how they keep score down here. And if they're going to keep score, I'm going to need some money. So help me to do that. Yeah, I got a couple minutes. So then I forgot about it, and I forgot all about it. Now, one of the things that I had done in my finances, starting almost instantly when I started working here and teaching Bible study, is God was very plain with me. You keep personal finances and ministry finances, you keep those separate. Well, I didn't have any ministry finances. I mean, I crushed cans, so once a year I got $100 or so. And there was some people in the Bible study class that throw some money in to help offset the meal cost. But other than that, I didn't have any, so it was fine. So when I opened my Bruce Fund, I opened one for me and one for the ministry. I opened my savings account, I opened one for me, one for the ministry. When I bought a house, the first one was for the ministry, the second one was for me. Third one for the ministry, fourth one for me, and so on. So, the first one, as I said, was a ministry house, and God used it. The second one, right after I bought it, was up on Converse, and Brian did a great job. He had a black girl in there, and she was fine, but she lost her job, and she thought she was going to live there for 3 months without paying rent. And I said, no, you can't do that. Well, she didn't pay rent. And so I had my attorney send her a letter, and she called all worried and upset. How can you do this? I said, well, you can't live there for free. And she said, now at this point she's 30 days behind. She said, okay, if I pay rent for this month, and I leave at the end of the month, will that be okay? And I said, as long as you leave it in rentable condition, that means everything cleaned, everything out, ready to go. If you do that, after you leave, I'm going to go inspect it. And if you do that, I won't pursue you for the lease. I'll let you break the lease and you can walk away. She said, okay, and she did. That was a new experience for me. Tenants never did that before. Now, the purpose of the duplex, because I got to tell you, I prayed for a long time about why did God bring that perfect deal, that perfect duplex to me, and then not let me have it. I didn't understand it. And it took me a long time to figure it out. Because I didn't trust anybody. I had been screwed so many times by so many people, I didn't trust anybody. And God said, hey, Brian Moore could have taken that house and sold it or bought it, and you'd have never known the difference. But he didn't. He heard and remembered what you said, and he contacted you. Now, the fact that you didn't get it isn't the point. The point is you can trust Brian Moore. And I was like, once I figured that out, I was like, okay, I got to cut it off here. We'll pick it up on another video.